more than 50 years, Corvettes have been exciting drivers with style, speed, and passion. It's known around the world as the American sports car. There's no mistaking a Corvette for anything else on the road. It's a car that screams power and passion. The Corvette has turned millions of people into loyal fans. Corvette enthusiasts celebrated their 50-year-long love affair with America's sports car in the summer of 2003. Every size, shape, and kind of Corvette was there. There was something for everybody. The Corvette has been turning heads since it landed on the automotive scene. This full immersion into the sights, sounds, and smells of everything Corvette attracted thousands of people and their cars to this two-day extravaganza. Famous designers like Jerry Palmer and racing legends like Bob Bondurant signed autographs.
Good deal, Bob. Good meeting you.
People came from all over the U.S. to join the fun. It was amazing to see how far the Corvette had come. The Corvette phenomenon began after World War II. Returning soldiers with a pent-up desire to have some fun went shopping for sports cars. Many found that the most fun for the dollar could be had in an MG. These low-slung, open-top roadsters sounded great and gave a driver a thrilling feel of the road. The MG and the other imported sports cars were light years away from what Detroit was offering in its showrooms. Their oversized sedans looked good, but they weren't sporty. Some designers decided that they should build an American sports car. They were convinced that they could build something as good as the MGs and Jaguars that were making an impression in the States. General Motors had the most money of any automaker, and its top designer, Harley Earl, was known for creating cars with flair. He invented the concept car and used these showstoppers on his daily drives to work. These cars showed off the talents of his design department. Earl's cadre of young dreamers were encouraged to push the boundaries of design. Not every idea was good, but they seemed to be in touch with what America yearned for. Their cars embodied the optimistic spirit of the day. The cars were such a hit that the company showed them off at special auto shows called the Motoramas. These were the first post-war auto shows. The public flocked to look at all the wild new cars and dream about driving one home. Earl told his designers that he wanted a sports car for the 1953 Motorama. It had to be something that would outdo the imports. Using a Jaguar XK120 as a starting point, the team set to work on the all-American sports car. Earl wanted it to be different. All the glass fiber speedboats on the Great Lakes in Michigan gave him an idea. Why not use this rust-free plastic? It would allow him to create any shape he wanted easier than if he were to use steel. Using glass fiber was risky. It had never been done on a production vehicle. Earl convinced the corporation to approve his plan. He promised that it would only be used on a concept car. As the car took shape, the search began for a name. In the era just after the war, a name inspired by a submarine hunter caught his attention. It sounded just right, a Corvette. The Motorama was nearly ready to open in January of 1953 at New York's Waldorf Astoria Hotel. General Motors had taken over the ballrooms and was busy converting them into a fantasy palace for chrome and steel. Thousands of people gathered to take in the show and see the dream cars. Earl's new Corvette was about to make its debut. In pearl white with a red interior, it was bound to be a showstopper. The curtains opened on a surprised couple as the press and the public got their first look at Earl's latest dream, the Corvette. Over 300,000 people saw the car at the Motorama. It created a buzz. The Corvette was a hit, and plans were finalized to rush it into production. Everybody was talking about the glass fiber-bodied roadster, and GM decided to go with the flow. The new cars would be built with these revolutionary bodies. Unfortunately, no one really knew how to do it. They turned to an unlikely source, a company that made molded glass fiber trays for Wonder Bread. The hope? It could figure out how to build strong car bodies. After some experimentation, things started to roll. By the end of June of 1953, Corvettes were coming off the assembly line in Flint, Michigan. The production cars were nearly identical to what the public had seen at the Motorama. All 300 1953 Corvettes were white with red interiors. They had rocket-ship taillights and a jet-inspired cockpit. Sales, however, didn't exactly take off. The public reacted to the steep $3,500 price tag, $245 more than the Jaguar XK120. And the Jaguar was 25 miles per hour faster than the Corvette. The problem was the Vette's sluggish, so-called Blue Flame 6-cylinder engine and 2-speed automatic transmission. Hoping to pump up sales, Chevrolet made the cars available to celebrities like John Wayne and the first host of NBC's Today Show, Dave Garroway.
Well, here's about the happiest automobile I've ever seen. The men who designed this had fun. And the builders and the testers had fun. And while it's never going to take the place of the family car, I, for one, am going to have a lot of fun owning it.
Earl hoped sales would improve the next year. In 1954, they were able to build more than 3,500 cars, but they still weren't selling well. Even a wider range of color choices couldn't move the cars off the lot. There was talk that the Corvette was on the way out. One person thought he knew what it needed, Zora Arcus Duntov. He became known as the father of the Corvette. Duntov told GM executives that the fix was simple: put a bigger engine in it. In 1956, GM took Duntov's suggestion and dropped its new V8 into the Corvettes. Word leaked out that more changes were coming, but would people respond?
I want a Corvette.
I thought you would.
These cars also sported a redesigned body with roll-up windows and a few more creature comforts. It had a 3-speed transmission and dual exhaust pipes built into the rear bumpers. Suddenly, people were interested in Corvettes again. Duntov took the more powerful cars to Daytona Beach to show the world that the Corvette had changed. The cars hit 150 miles per hour on the sand. They thought they finally had a car that could compete with the Europeans. Sales nearly doubled. Chevrolet gave Duntov the green light to keep working on enhancing the performance image. In 1957, he began to build a factory race car based on the Corvette. He called it the Corvette Super Sport, or SS. His goal was to have it ready for the 12-hour race at Sebring. This would be a chance to show the world that Corvettes could compete with the best that Jaguar, Ferrari and Maserati had to offer. To top it off, Duntov prepared a modified fuel-injected Chevrolet V8. The car was created in 5 months and shipped to Florida for the race. The spotlight was on the Corvette. The whole racing world was watching. The team worked on final touches, and then it was time to race. Other modified Corvettes joined the SS in the race. The SS started strongly, but quickly developed brake problems. The driver, John Fitch, had to pull the car out of the race. The rest of the team continued, but Juan Manuel Fangio took the checkered flag in his Maserati. It wasn't a total loss. One Corvette won the production GT class, and its teammates finished 15th and 16th. Duntov was determined to keep racing. But the American Automobile Manufacturing Association convinced its members to quit racing. It was an era when racing deaths were increasingly common. The big 3 auto companies didn't want the bad publicity associated with sponsoring something dangerous. Also, they feared that the public would pressure the government to add costly safety features to their passenger cars. The easy route: quit racing. There were people in GM who wanted to keep racing. One was Harley Earl's replacement, Bill Mitchell. Mitchell loved racing and thought it was important to keep the Corvette in front of the public. He took control of what was left of Duntov's racing projects. He started a plan to get it back on track. He decided to build a new car and race it as a private individual, not as part of an official corporate team. Of course, he'd use all of GM's facilities to do this, but it gave everyone cover if something went wrong. By 1959, he'd prepared a new car that used many of the pieces from the Corvette SS. It had a different look and different name, the Stingray. Mitchell tapped an accomplished amateur driver, a dentist, Dick Thompson, to pilot the car. Driving in Sports Car Club of America races, Thompson had competed in his own Corvette. Mitchell was confident that the dentist's wholesome good looks and genial manner would counteract any potentially negative publicity. Of course, he hoped Thompson would win some races too. They took the car out in April of 1959. Once again, they had brake trouble. Also, they had a new concern. The radical aviation-inspired made the car want to take off. Lift was a good feature in an airplane, but not in a race car. If they wanted to win, they had to make some adjustments to keep the wheels on the ground. It took them several months to get the car into shape. Finally, it started to win. It won the SCCA C production title in 1960 and showed that the Corvette was still alive. The popularity of the racer began to influence the thinking about styling for the next Corvette. This was first seen in the 1961 Corvettes. The four round taillights were new and gave the world a look at things to come. The big change came in 1963 with the racer-inspired Corvette Stingray. This was a breakthrough car. A powerful V8, 4-speed manual transmission and independent rear suspension indicated that the new Corvette would handle like a true sports car. The public loved the Stingray. However, it wasn't without some controversy. People thought the fastback top was great, but Mitchell's split window design was not practical. Mitchell argued that it made the car look racier, but the split ended up a lot wider than they thought. It really obstructed vision. Mitchell finally gave in. The split was gone in 1964. The Corvette Stingray was destined to become a classic. Only minor changes were made to the car's shape over the next few years. It was basically the same car. No one wanted to tamper with a classic. Bigger motors were an option. Buyers could order a 427 cubic inch big block motor that came with side-mounted exhaust pipes and flared hood scoops. All of the Stingrays have remained extremely popular with collectors. But by 1967, it was time to make a change. Mitchell had a radical idea for the new Corvette.
This new GM experimental idea car is not for sale and probably never will be as such. But some of its innovations and touches of styling may appear in the showroom model someday. It's an offspring of the Chevrolet Corvette, known as the Mako Shark II.
The Shark was more than 9 inches longer and nearly 3 inches lower than the Stingray. New features included iodine quartz headlights, retractable stabilizing flaps at the rear, recessed windshield wipers, and remotely controlled louvers that could be opened for ventilation and visibility to the rear. This wild car gave Corvette fans a glimpse into the future. The Mako Shark-inspired Corvette was released in 1968. It had the styling pizzazz of the show car, but not all of its way-out features. The new cars weren't universally loved. Some objected to the styling. Others didn't like the interiors. The cars were plagued with quality problems. This was not a high point for the Corvette, but most people liked the engines. Its big block and standard engines were powerful. Unfortunately, the muscle was about to be stripped from the American car. The era of regulation was underway. The public and the government worried about smog, the environment, safety, and fuel shortages. Horsepower was on the way out. The Corvette needed an ally. Duntov had retired, and Bill Mitchell was ready to go. These factors weighed heavily on the prospects for its future. The Corvette still had support among the car-buying public. By 1982, these fans were paying over $20,000 for a new Vette. Their loyalty helped to convince the company to keep it alive. David McClellan, the new head of Corvette engineering, teamed up with Jerry Palmer, Corvette's new chief designer, to create the 5th generation of Corvettes. The car went from Palmer's sketchpad to the streets by the spring of 1983. The new Corvette looked like a modern interpretation of the Stingray. It had clean lines and an unmistakable aggressive stance. While it was a good-looking car, people wanted to know how fast it would go. The car's 140 miles per hour top speed gave Corvette fans something to cheer about. Its handling and performance prompted some in the media to compare it to Ferrari and Porsche. America's sports car had finally hit its stride. The torch was passed to a new generation of engineers and designers. They were tasked with creating the next generation Corvette. They wanted to be ready for the 40th anniversary of the car in 1993. But budget cutbacks and a mountain of other problems pushed back its release until 1997. Getting the car from concept through testing and out on the street was a Herculean task. The team forged ahead, dodging all the roadblocks and refusing to give up. After spending $250 million and 7 years developing the car, they were ready to show it to the world in 1998. It took a few years to catch on, but its superior performance and handling won over the critics. While it was a different Vette, it still retained some familiar styling cues. This was a car that would finally put to rest the hand-wringing about whether the Corvette was really a sports car that could compete with the Europeans. It was the perfect car to take to any Corvette celebration. The final salute to 50 years of the Corvette took place in America's heartland, Effingham, Illinois. This all-American town was a great setting to wrap up the festivities. Every year, Mid-America Direct, an online and catalog company that caters to Corvette enthusiasts, turns the ploughed cornfields around its Effingham headquarters into the setting for the Fun Fest. Over 30,000 Corvette lovers and their cars showed up for the car's 50th birthday party. Soon, it was time to dream about things to come, the next generation of Corvettes. Chevrolet was ready to introduce the new car in just a few months. It rolled out to the media at the North American Auto Show in 2004. It was quite a departure from the original six-cylinder show car. The new Corvette wasn't radically different from its immediate predecessor, though. The goal was to deliver high performance with style, value, and quality. It was more agile and had better handling. It came with a powerful 400 horsepower V8. A car for taking corners or straightaways with confidence. A car designed to be driven. It did away with the hideaway headlights that have been a hallmark of the Corvette since the Stingray. And the rear of the car was restyled. It's been a long journey for the Corvette. Very few marques can claim an unbroken chain from their inception to the present day. It's been transformed from pretty cream puff to genuine sports car. It's been quite a ride, and it's not over yet.